welcome back to Grace Everyday Podcast, real relatable encouragement for Christian wives of blue collar guys. So, last episode, we talked about how creating your identity in Christ is the foundation for self worth, that inherent self belief or belief in yourself and your worth as a human being lays the foundation for the next several episodes where we're going to kind of drill down into how changing who you are will change what you do. So, before I get started, one of my favorite quotes from Michael Josephson says, "You don't have to be sick to get better." And I love that. And almost every time when we're speaking, when Mac and I are speaking, or if it's just me by myself, even, that's one of the first things that I share because we all want to remember that there's nothing wrong with us, right? We don't have to be fixed. There's nothing wrong with us. We're not inherently broken, but we don't have to be sick to get better. And wanting to get better is a beautiful thing. Your definition of better is going to be different than my definition of better or anyone else's definition of better, and that's okay. To you, your better, your definition of I want to get better might mean raising your kids or your daughter to have the self-confidence you wish you had always had. It might mean running a 5K or a full 26.2-mile marathon, or better might mean improving your communication skills at work or at home, or better might just mean increasing your influence with your 15-year-old son. It might be starting your own business, or getting out of debt, or getting out of a hurtful relationship, or getting healthier, quitting smoking, getting a promotion, or just having enough willpower to say no, right? Whatever it is, there's no wrong definition of better. But we just have to remember, like Michael Josephson said, you don't have to be sick to get better. Wanting to get better is a beautiful, normal, healthy, human thing to do. And we just have to keep the perspective that there's nothing wrong with us to begin with, simply because we want to get better. So better is just tapping into your potential to do more and have more and be more. But you have to believe, number one, that that is possible, because your belief drives your behavior. Belief drives behavior. If you don't believe you're capable of accomplishing or getting to that better, you won't align your behavior with it and you won't create it. It's almost like, if you don't, you've all heard the cliche, if you believe it, you can achieve it. Well, there might be some things you can believe you can fly, but that doesn't mean you're going to fly, right? But if you don't believe better is possible, you won't ever take the actions and make the choices that will make it possible. So belief drives behavior. We have to believe that it, A, is possible, and B, we want it and we're willing to work for it. Every woman who got to where she is now started from where she once was. You can't love yourself until you have a solid foundation built on your sense of self-worth. And if you don't believe that you have value, you won't really love yourself enough to care for yourself or develop yourself and develop your potential. Because if you don't think you have inherent self-worth, you won't believe that it's worth developing or stepping into that potential. A big part of loving yourself is accepting the things that made you who you are. Brene Brown told us that owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we'll ever do. And I think that's where loving yourself begins. Owning who you are and owning what happened in life that helped make you who you are. I kind of talked in the last episode about how we can't control what happens to us most of the time, right? We cannot control most of what happens in life, but we can control how we respond to what happens. And that is something we have to take ownership of. Not taking ownership for everything that happens, but taking ownership for the choices, decisions, actions, and behaviors that we make in response to what happened. Now, that's hard to do, right? As Stephen Covey talks about being proactive. And to me, to understand that, you have to think about the opposite of proactive is being reactive. Being reactive is responding to something that happens, or something that happens to us, or someone that says something, or something in our environment, a situation. Being reactive is responding to something based on the emotions of the moment. Now, We all have emotions. We're human being. It's normal to have emotions and feelings, particularly when things don't go our way. Those emotions are just going to bubble up. They're there. That's normal. That's natural. But the essence of being proactive is, instead of responding based on the emotion of the moment, is responding to the situation with a step back and saying, what's going to serve me better? Instead of letting those emotions drive or dictate our behavior, we can say, hey, the emotion is there, but I don't have to act on it. I can be proactive. I can choose my response. And therefore, since we can choose our response when things happen, we are therefore responsible, because we are response able. So responsible for the choices that we make in response to what happens to us. So when you start to understand that concept, and again, that's one of those things that says easy and does really hard, right? We've all gotten it right at times, but we've all gotten it wrong from time to time. I certainly get it wrong still. I mean, it's just one of those things that life is tough, and being proactive when life is tough is a challenge for all of us. But think of it this way: when you master that ability to be proactive, and when things happen, you say, you know what, emotion is there, but I don't have to say something or do something in the emotion of the moment. I bet I'm not the only one who said or done something in the emotion of the moment and later thought, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Shouldn't have done that, right? That didn't serve me very well. The greatest emotional freedom is when you realize that you can choose your response when something happens. And that means that nobody else in the world can make you mad or angry. No one can make you have a bad day. No one can make you make a bad decision. You and only you are the one responsible for what you do in response to what happens in life. It's the greatest emotional freedom, because now no one else can make you have a bad day or a bad week or a bad life. You get to choose how you respond. And then it's not an easy decision always, but it is a decision to say, I don't have to let this affect me emotionally. I don't have to let that determine how I respond. Says easy and does hard. It's kind of like New Year's resolutions. I use the analogy of getting hungry. You can't control the fact that you get hungry, right? That's something that happens. It's human. But you can control what you put in your mouth in response to that hunger. You have 100% control over that. And whatever you choose to eat, when you make that choice, you are automatically also choosing the consequences of that choice. So, for example, I've shared this with a lot of different people over the years and in some of my books, but I love ice cream. I mean, pretty much all kinds of ice cream. Like I don't, someone's like, well, what's your favorite flavor? All of them. I've never met ice cream that I don't like. um, but I can't eat ice cream every day. Now, well, I guess I could, right? But if I choose to eat ice cream every single day, then I'm also at some level choosing the consequences of eating ice cream every day, which at some point would lead to bigger pants, because I'd be getting too much sugar and too many calories. And that's the consequence, right? Is leading to bigger pants. Now, since I don't want those consequences, I choose not to eat the ice cream every day. Occasionally, yes. Every day, no. But you get where I'm going with this, right? Things happen and we can't control that, but we can control what we do in response. Now, here's the thing: loving yourself will lead to taking care of yourself, but we have to start with the self worth and the self belief that I talked about in last episode that sets the foundation for self love. And loving yourself and your story, what made you who you are today, takes courage. To really love yourself is to acknowledge the mistakes and imperfections and past hurts, experiences that we've gone through, and the insecurities that they've caused, and not being ashamed of who you are and what you've experienced. Do the work to overcome it. Do the work to grow from it, because this work lays the foundation for you to be the best version of yourself. But if you are just joining us for the first time in this episode, go back and listen to that episode I talked about last week about creating the identity based on your sense of identity in Christ, because that means that we don't have to be ashamed of what we've gone through or mistakes that we've made in the past, because that's the freedom of saying, you know what, I am a new creation in Christ. That was a big part of my healing and growth. Owning my story, owning what happened to me, because until I owned it, it owned me. I had to own it. It's a hard chapter of my life, but it's just one chapter. You've probably had some hard chapters too. We all do, but one chapter of the story isn't the whole story. It's not even the rest of the story or the best of the story. So think about that. If you're struggling to let go of some hard chapters in your past, own them and move past them. Don't dwell on it, but look back, acknowledge it, and then turn around and face it, the future, right? Your future. Because what happens to us doesn't define us. Our sense of self worth is not based on what we've done in the past, mistakes we've made, or things that we've been through, right? History is not our destiny. Hal Elrod said it best. He said, we mistakenly believe that who we were is who we are, thus limiting our true potential in the present based on the limitations of our past. And that is such a great quote. Like, thinking, when you really start to think about that, that means that we are not judging ourselves for mistakes in the past. We're not limiting our potential in the future based on mistakes in the past. So I know that starts to get a little deep there, but mastering yourself, mastering self love means that you accept who you are without coming from that place of judgment, but instead coming from a place of commitment to your growth. Commitment to be better, not because you're sick, because you don't have to be sick to get better. And when you get better, your relationships get better, your family gets better, work gets better, community gets better, everything gets better when we get better. So think here for a moment about what your definition of better looks like, because we're talking about belief drives behavior. And I touched on this earlier, but you have to believe that better is possible. So think for a moment what your definition of better looks like in your life. Even if you need to stop the podcast and pause the podcast and really think about this. Pick maybe just one area to focus on to begin with. Maybe it's your health or career or relationship with your husband. Maybe it's your spiritual health. Whatever it is. Dream, right? Dream here. You're not just allowing yourself to dream. You're creating a vision in your mind of what your future can and will look like. Now, you've heard it's kind of a cliche that we all say, hope's not a strategy. But without hope, you won't develop that strategy. Vision alone isn't enough. There has to be action. And we'll talk about a lot of that, especially in future episodes. But for these first two foundational, or three even foundational episodes, I really wanted to drill down into just number one, making sure that sense of identity and self-worth is based and rooted in faith. And then believing that whatever you want to change or grow, or whatever you want to get better in any dimension of your life, it is possible. Vision alone isn't enough. But Proverbs 29:18 reminds us that without vision, people perish, right? And that's really just saying you have to have that vision to begin with. Because the vision is going to drive everything else. The vision is going to drive the actions, choices, and the sacrifices that will come. Great lives are made up of great years. Great years are made up of great days. Great days are made up of great hours. Great hours are made up of great minutes. And great minutes are made from great moments. Now, here's the thing. Every moment isn't always great, but it's always a possibly defining moment. Because every moment brings possibility and potential to either take us closer to or farther away from our destination and our goals. And it's the choices that we make in that moment that determine if the moment is great or not. Every choice we make determines who we are becoming. So you know, once you start to think about that, just keep in mind, every moment's not going to be a great moment. We're not going to get everything right. We all make mistakes. We all get things wrong. You're not always going to make choices that move you forward. because you're human and humans aren't perfect. But the important thing here is to focus on just getting better instead of being perfect. Perfecting your life isn't possible, but improving is always possible. So I want you to think about that. Love yourself enough to start visioning what you want your future to look like. Vision is going to be the foundation that will help you make the right choices and take the right actions to make that vision become a reality. So I'll share with you an example. A couple of months ago, I realized I was getting plenty of exercise, cardio exercise in with my running. I ran a couple of marathons last year, and I enjoy. Well, I don't know that I say I enjoy the marathon itself, but I enjoy having a marathon or a race on the calendar because that helps me be more disciplined with my eating and sleeping and training. And so it's just one of the ways that I make sure I'm intentional with my health. But what I realized was I in some of that couple of months of training and really being intentional with my running, I'd let some of the focus on strength training just it just was not a priority. And I realized a couple months ago, number one, in this decade of my life, strength training is critical to my long-term health goals for myself. Everyone should decide for themselves what their long-term health goals are. I'm just sharing with you mine. But I know that strength training is really critical for me and for where I want to be in the next few decades of life. So when I realized that I'd sort of just let that priority fall away, I number one was like, I need to be more intentional about getting that back and making sure that that is a priority. And so the way that process looks like is once you identified, hey, this is an area I want to get better in, then just start to envision what that would look like. Think about the benefits, think about the rewards, and think about what really needs to change. Now, for me, that was looking at when in the week I was going to either move something or shuffle something or change something so that I had time for that extra strength training that I wanted to add, right? But it starts with a vision in your mind. It's kind of like a house blueprint. It has to be created before the house can be built. When you vision the future for yourself and what you're working for, that's going to give you the blueprint for what you need to do to make that happen. So it starts with that vision, that belief that A, better is possible, and B, I'm committed to doing it, right? There's a difference between being interested in something getting better and committed to doing that. And we will drill down a lot more into that in future episodes. Because yeah, vision alone is not enough, but it's going to start with the vision, right? The world needs you to become your version of better, whatever that is, whatever that looks like for you. Rachel Hollis said, the world needs you to show up for your life and take hold of your potential. And I always think about it this way. Your potential was given to you. What you do with it determines what you're able to turn around and give others, right? Your potential is God given to you for a reason. It's given to you to help you fulfill your purpose. Your why am I here is your purpose, right? And that's tied up in your potential. It's why you're created. But here's the thing, those dreams that you have of what better can look like, they're inside you for a reason. You're capable of making them come true, and you can make them come true. A little bit of work, a lot of bit of work, and a whole lot of grace, right? So, super excited for our episode next week. I've got a special guest joining me. She's going to share her story of realizing how her identity is rooted in Christ and not in earning or getting a sense of self-worth based on her behavior. So super excited for that podcast next week to come out. So look for that on January 21st. And just remember, life is tough, but God's grace is enough. Until next time.